Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, 13a of Maseches Taanis, and we are basically at the very bottom line of the page. The first word on the line is Rava. Gemara said there, Amar Rava. Rava said, Avel mutter lirchotz bitzonin kol shiva. An Avel, someone who's in mourning, is permitted to wash themselves, to bathe in cold water during the Shiva, during the 7 days of mourning. Midi dahava bisra v'chamra, just as the Avel is permitted to eat meat and drink wine, and that's seemingly accepted. So says Rava, so similarly one is allowed to bathe in cold water, right? We learned last week, we went through the opinion of Rav Chisda, which is actually how we paskin, that an Avel may not bathe neither in hot water nor in cold water. Here Rava says, now an Avel may bathe in cold water, just like the Avel is allowed to eat meat and drink wine. And those, as Rashi explains, are tanug, they're for enjoyment, and they're not refraining from them is just a lack of pleasure, and yet we allow the Avel to enjoy that, and so he's also allowed to have the basic pleasure of bathing in cold water, while the extensive pleasure of hot water we do not allow. So the Gemara says, Meisvei, the Gemara says, let's ask a contradiction from a brisa. Top of the next page, it says, Eina bogeres rasha lenaveles atzma bimei avel aviha. The brisa says that a bogeres is a girl, a woman who is 12 and a half years old, so she's reached an age of maturity, and now she's of marriageable age because she's 12 and a half. So she is not permitted, the brisa says, l'naveles atzma, to make herself look bad during the days of her father's avelos. Now a couple of things need to be qualified about this statement. First of all, Tosfos says that it doesn't mean she's not allowed, it just says she doesn't have to make herself ugly. She's permitted to, we have certain leniencies so that she can keep up her appearance to increase her likelihood of finding a marriage partner. So we don't require her to make herself look bad. And this is during the time, the avelos of her father, the mourning of her father. Now what does the mourning of her father mean? So Rashi actually says it could mean one of two things. It could mean that the mourning of her father, that his son has died, which may be her brother, so it would be her mourning as well for that, or even not. Seemingly she's in mourning, it's talking about. As we'll see, the Gemara is trying to bring proofs. So during her mourning of her brother, or it could also just mean mourning of her father's death, which also she would be in mourning, she would be in avelos. In any event, while this girl is in avelos, is in mourning, it says she's not required l'naveles atzma, to make herself ugly. She can keep up her beauty to, again, increase her ability to get married. So the Gemara says, the implication is hanaira rasha. The implication is that a naira, someone who's just 12 years old, but not 12 and a half, a girl, she is allowed to, and seemingly required, to allow herself to become ugly during avelos, meaning she's not going to be allowed to perform certain beautifying activities. Now, which beautifying activity are we talking about? What is it that a normal avel, like a naira, a girl who's only 12 years old exactly, would not be allowed to do, and we make an exception for this bogeres. So, the Gemara says, Ma'ila berechitza, aren't we talking about bathing? That's the beautifying activity that we're talking about. Uvemai, now what kind of water are we talking about bathing in? That the bogeres is allowed to, but the naira is not. Ilema bechamen, if you tell me we're talking about hot water, that can't be. Enga bogeres rasha, we don't allow the bogeres to allow herself to become ugly, rather we tell her to bathe in hot water. Could that be? V'ha'amar Rav Chisda, didn't Rav Chisda say, Avel asur lahoshit etzba'o b'chamen? We know that an Avel is absolutely forbidden to even put a finger in hot water. And we wouldn't make, if we don't allow any aval to put even a finger in hot water, we're not going to make an exception and allow a bogeres to bathe and beautify herself in hot water. That can't be. Elulav bitzonin. So it must be talking about tzonin. So what do we see? We see that normally you're not allowed to bathe in tzonin, in cold water. And specifically for a bogeres, we make an exception. But a naira is not, another person's not. And this would seemingly be a contradiction to Rava. Rava had said that an avel is allowed to bathe in cold water. Here we're saying that normally people are not allowed to bathe in cold water except for one exception for a bogeres. So the Gemara says, well, that's not what we're talking about. That's not the beautifying activity. We're not talking about bathing. Rather, akichul upirchus. We're talking about kichul, which is like putting on makeup, and pirchus is some type of stuff you could put in your hair to beautify it. That's what we're talking about. We're not, certainly, Rava can say that nobody's allowed to bathe in hot water, everyone's allowed to bathe in cold water, and everybody's equal with regards to that. And what we're talking about here is other beautifying activities, such as putting on makeup or beautifying one's hair. So that normally a person is not allowed to do. A naira would not be allowed to do that. But a bogeres, once she's 12 and a half and she's now in the parsha, she has potential suitors watching her, so then she would be allowed to put on makeup and do her hair. Okay, the Gemara says, Lema Misayele. Maybe I actually have a proof to Rava who said that an avel can bathe in cold water. De Amar Rabbi Abba HaKohen Mishum Rabbi Yossi HaKohen. Rabbi Abba HaKohen said in the name of Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, Maise Umesu Banav Shel Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. We learned this last week. There was a story where the sons of Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina died. The Rachatz Bitzonin Kol Shiva, and he bathed in cold water during the 7 days. So even though Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina was in Avelos, he was mourning the death of his sons, he still bathed in cold water. So you see that Rava is correct, you're allowed to bathe in cold water during mourning. So the Gemara says, no. Amri, we said, Hasam Bishatakfuhu Avelov Zachar Zah. There we already said we're talking about, or could have been talking about, where he had mourning back to back, one after the other, meaning it says that he was mourning his sons, and the Gemara is saying they didn't die at the same time, they die a few days apart. And when you have consecutive periods of mourning or shivas, so then we make an exception on certain halachos. Here, the Tanya, like we learned in a brisa, takfu evalav zachar. If a person had two mourning periods, one after the other, immediately one after the other, or even overlapping. So if hichbitsara make if a person's hair got very heavy, they can be lenient to cut their hair using a razor. And they can wash their clothes in water. And Amar Rav Chisda explained, it's very specific what they're allowed to do. They can cut their hair with a razor, a sharp blade, but not with scissors, because that's the normal way to do it. They have to do it in an abnormal way. And when they wash their clothes, it could be in water, but not with neser, which is a chemical to help, some kind of detergent. Not with sand, which apparently was also used as a detergent. Which is another type of plant or something that could be used to help clean. You can't use that, even though we make an exception when a person has back-to-back mourning periods that they're allowed to wash their clothes, but they can't use any of these special detergents. But in any event, there's no proof from this story to Rava's halacha that a avel, a mourner, can bathe in cold water, because that which in the story Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina bathed in cold water was specific to his circumstance, where he had back-to-back mourning periods. He lost both sons back-to-back. The Gemara says, Ikada Amri, there are those who said that Rava actually said the opposite, that Amar Rava Avel Asr Bitzonin Kol Sheva, that Rava actually agreed with the opinion from the previous page of Rav Chisda and said that an Avel is not allowed to bathe in cold water during Shiva. And if so, Ma'ishnami Basar V'yayin, what's the difference between bathing and eating meat and drinking wine? Why is an Avel allowed the pleasure of eating meat and drinking wine, but is not allowed to bathe in cold water? So, to that, the Gemara says, Hasam with kuche pachte hu da'avid. The person eats meat and drinks wine to release their worries. It's a coping mechanism, it seems. The reason why, says the Gemara, an Avel is allowed to eat meat and drink wine but cannot have the pleasure of bathing in cold water is because they need the meat and wine to help them deal with the anxiety and the loss and just to help them cope. The Gemara says, Lema misayele. So now if we're saying that Rava said that an Avel is not allowed to bathe in cold water, so now maybe we have a proof from that first brisa that we quoted. That said, Ein abogeres rashal an Avel atzma. A bogeres, a 12-and-a-half-year-old girl, or older, may not make herself ugly. Ha-naira rasha, implying that a naira, a girl who's under 12-and-a-half, 12 approximately, she is allowed to make herself ugly and is required to, meaning she's not allowed to engage in beautification practices. So then the Gemara assumes, again, as we did earlier, that we're talking about bathing. So it says, B'mai, what kind of bathing, beautification, are we not allowing the naira to do, but we're allowing the bogeres? Ilema b'chaming, if you tell me we're talking about bathing in hot water, ein ha-bogeres rasha, the bogeres is not allowed to refrain, meaning she can't make herself ugly, rather she must or is allowed to bathe in the hot water? How could that be? V'ha'amar Rav Chisda, Avel asur lo shetitzpo b'chamin. Rav Chisda saying Avel can't even stick a finger in hot water, and if an Avel normally can't even stick a finger in hot water, then we're not going to allow a bogeres to bathe in hot water. That can't be. So elulav bitzonin. So we must be talking about cold water. And what we're saying is that normally an Avel may not bathe in cold water, and a naira may not bathe in cold water, but we make an exception for a bogeres to allow her to keep up her appearance, to make her more desired for marriage. So, and what do we see according to this? Like this version of Rava saying that it's normally forbidden to bathe in cold water. So this would be a proof to Rava's halacha. But then again, the Gemara comes up with the same reason why to reject the proof. It says, no, we're not talking about bathing at all. Kichul upirchos. We're talking about makeup and doing the hair, and we're not talking about bathing. What we're saying is that even though normally a naira would not be allowed to put on makeup, etc., while she is in mourning, and a married woman seemingly would not either, but a bogeres, this young woman who's of marriageable age, so we make an exception for her and we allow her to put on makeup, etc., but we do not allow her to engage in the pleasurable experience of bathing even in cold water while she's in mourning. Okay, Amar Rav Chisda said, based on all this, Zoso Meres, based on what we're saying that we don't allow a girl to put on makeup and do her hair. Again, this is a special process of doing your hair, but we don't allow her to do this. So based on that, it should follow that Avel Asr B'tach Boses Kol Shiva. That an Avel should also be forbidden to do laundry during the Shiva. Also, beautification, cleaning the clothes, etc. So he says it follows that that's also forbidden. The Hilchasa, and what is the halacha? The Gemara paskins, the Gemara rules, the Gemara says, Avel Asr Lirchotz Kol Gufo Bein B'chamin Bein Mitzonim. An Avel is forbidding from bathing, washing their whole body, and that's true whether in hot water or in cold water, Kol Shiva, throughout the 7 days of mourning. Ava Panav Yadav V'Raglav, but what about hands, legs, and face, hands and legs, or face, hands, and feet? So that B'chamin Asr, that's forbidden in hot water, but B'tzonin Mutter, but it's permitted in cold water, and Avel can wash their face, hands, and feet in cold water. Aval Lasuch, but to put on creams and oils, afilu kol shehu aser, even a little bit is forbidden for an avel. However, v'imla aver hazuama mutter, but if it's to remove actual dirt, so then one is permitted to use these gels, and those are the halachos of an avel. Now the Gemara turns to a different topic, or back to the topic of fast, and it says, Slusa de Taanis hechi mit karina. The special prayer that we insert for a fast, anenu, which we had talked about in our earlier Gemara, where or how or where do we insert? How is it said? Heichi met karinan, how is it said? So Adabri Rav Yehuda Rav Yitzchak Brei B'darash. Rav Yehuda, I guess, told over to Rav Yitzchak, his son, and explained the following. Yachid shekibel alav Taanis. If an individual accepts a fast, mispalel shel Taanis, he should daven the special tefillah of a fast, the special prayer of Anenu Hashem, Anenu b'yom Tani. Saying, oh God, you should answer us on the day of our fast. So he should say that if an individual accepts a fast, they say Anenu. V'heichan amra, and when does he say it? Ben goel l'rofe. He should say it between the bracha of Goel Yisrael and Rifa'enu in Shemona Esrei. So in Shemona Esrei we have the bracha of Goel Yisrael. I think it's the 6th bracha, if I'm not mistaken. And that asks Hashem to redeem us from our daily challenges, followed by a bracha that God should cure the sick. And he says that's where we should insert the special blessing of Anenu on a fast. So the Gemara says, Maskif la Rav Yitzchak. Rav Yitzchak had a difficult question on this. He said, how could it be? V'chi yachid kovea bracha la'atzmo? Can an individual establish a blessing for himself? Meaning, the Shemona Esrei is very specific. It's 18 brachos. We're in 19 because there was one that was added, but it's right. It's this very specific number of brachos, and it's true. Sometimes we'll add in for specific reasons, but for an individual to decide that he's going to have a fast, just him, and add a bracha to Shemona Esrei as a result of that, so that Rav Yitzchak says is untenable. Can't be. El Amar Rav Yitzchak. So rather, Rav Yitzchak said, B'shomei Tefillah. Where do you say Anenu? You say it in the blessing of Shomei Tefillah, that God listens to our prayers. The bracha of Shema Koleinu, God shall hear our prayers. In there you insert this prayer of Anenu, and then it doesn't have its own concluding blessing. It ends, Baruch Atah Hashem Shomei Tefillah, and that covers both what we were davening for, Shema Koleinu, God should hear our voice in general, and it also covers what we added, Anenu Hashem Anenu, God should answer our prayers specifically on this fast, and then we end both of those combined with the blessing of Baruch Atah Hashem, Shomei Tefillah, blessed are you, God, who hears our prayers. He says that's where you don't add a new blessing, you combine it into an existing blessing of Shomei Tefillah. V'chein Amar Rav Sheshes, B'Shomei Tefillah. Rav Sheshes said the same thing, you also say it in Shomei Tefillah, and that's what we do when we daven on the fast day, and we say Anenu, we add it into Shomei Tefillah. The Gemara asks Meisvei, but I have a contradiction on that, because it says in a brisa, Ein ben yachid u'tzibur. There's no difference between an individual and a congregation. Elo shezeh mispalel shmona esrei, v'zeh mispalel t'sha esrei. The only difference is that an individual davens 18 blessings, which would be 19 once we add the v'lam al-shinim, the added blessing. V'zeh mispalel t'sha esrei, and the shliach, it just said the tzibur, we'll see what that means, but the congregation davens 19, which is 20, right? But the individual davens 18, and the tzibur, the congregation, davens 19. Now, what does that mean? 18, 19. What are we talking about? Or rather, what's the yachid and what's the tzibur? The Gemara says, "My yachid and my tzibur." What do we mean by an individual davens 18 and the congregation davens 19? What does that mean? Ilema yachid mamesh v'tzibur shliach tzibur. Maybe you'll say what it means is the yachid is an individual davening on his own, and the tzibur, the congregation, means the shliach tzibur, the chazan, the one representing the tzibur. He says an additional blessing. The Gemara says that can't be. Why? Because Hanit Shastre, you're telling me that he would daven 19? Esrin va'arba havu, it's 24. Look, later in the upcoming Mishnah, it's going to talk about what's the Seder Taanis. How do you what do you do in a Taanis? The first Mishnah of the next parak on Daf Tesvav, page 15a. And it's going to say that, we'll talk about it. You go out to the streets and you're davening and you bring out the Aron and all these things. And one of the things is that the Shliach Tzibor has 24 blessings in his Shmona Esrei, in his Chazaras Hashatz, in his repetition. So it's 24, it's not 19. So when it says that an individual davens 18 and the congregation davens 19, by congregation it can't mean the Shliach Tzibor, the representative of the congregation, because he actually davens 24. So what does it mean? So the Gemara says, so isn't it saying as follows? Ein ben yachid de kibel olav Taanis yachid, liyachid shekibel olav Taanis tzibor. There's no difference between an individual who accepted a Taanis yachid, an individual fast upon himself, versus an individual who accepted a public fast upon himself, meaning the fast that he accepted would have the laws applicable to a public fast. A person had the ability to do that. So, and the only difference is, there's no difference except the only difference is that the individual accepting an individual fast upon himself davens 18, and the individual accepting a public fast upon himself davens 19. Now, again, by 19 we mean 20. We mean we're adding in a new blessing. So Shema Mina says, the Gemara we see from here, Yachid koveya bracha la'atzmo, that an individual could establish a blessing for himself, meaning, in this case, the individual accepting a public fast upon himself, and the Bryce is saying that he adds a blessing. So you see, an individual could take on a new blessing on himself. So Rav Yitzchak was incorrect. Rav Yosef, actually, according to some versions, was incorrect. He challenged the teaching of Rav Yehuda to Rav Yitzchak, his son, who said that you adding a blessing. He said, could an individual adding a new blessing between Goel Yisrael and Rifa'eno, you adding a new blessing? No, you can't adding a new blessing. You have to put it in Shema Koleinu. You have to put it into an existing blessing. Gemara says, what do you mean? We have a brisa. The brisa seems to say that if an individual accepts a public fast upon himself, he adds another blessing. He says he has 19 blessings. He's adding another blessing. So you see, an individual could add a blessing. So the Gemara says, no, incorrect. That's not the proper reading of that brisa. No, really, it's as we originally thought. When it said Yachid, it meant an individual. When it said Tzibor, it meant the Shliach Tzibor. And it said an individual davens 18 blessings, and the Shliach Tzibor, the Chazan, davens 19 blessings. And but we asked, Udikakashiolach, now which you were bothered, Shliach Tzibor Esrin va'arba matzli, that the Shliach Tzibor davens 24, not 19. So it's true, sometimes he davens 24. But we are talking about Begimel Tainios Rishonos. We're talking about the first three fasts. Deleka Esrim Va'arba, where you don't have 24. You don't have 24 blessings yet in the Shliach Tzibor Shmona Esrei. So the Gemara says, no, you're right. If later he has, as we add more fast, because there's no rain, it goes up and we start to do 24, but at the beginning, when the first three fasts, there's only 19. You add this one for the fast day Anenu, but that's it. There's only one additional one, and that's what we mean. But an individual on his own never adds a new blessing. An individual puts it in Shomei Tefillah. When you have the Shliach Tzibor, so he'll do 20. Or, again, 19, which is really 20. He adds the new blessing. The Gemara asks, Vilo, really? You don't have 24 blessings on the first three fasts? V'ha'ein beint katani. But the Brisa says there's no difference. What does it say there's no difference about? It says, ein ben gimel rishonos lo gimel emtzayos. It says there's no difference between the first three and the middle three. Ela shebe'elu mutar b'asiyas malacha, uve'elu asurun b'asiyas malacha. it said the only difference between the first 3 fasts and the next 3 fasts is that the first 3 fasts you're allowed to do work, and in the next 3 fasts you're not allowed to do work. But otherwise, they're the same. Halachav Daled, Zeh v'zeh shavin. So for the 24 blessings, though, it sounds like they're equal. And in the first 3 fasts, you do say, the Shliach Tzibor, the Chazan, does have 24 blessings. And so again, the Brisa can't be talking about the Chazan. It must be talking about the individual who accepts a public fast upon himself, and you see an individual could add blessings. So the Gemara says, no, Tana v'shayir. We taught and we left things over, meaning when it said there's no difference between the first 3 fasts and next 3 fasts, except for that the first 3 you're allowed to do malacha and the next 3 you're not allowed to do malacha, the Gemara is saying, no, really, there's other things too. And one of those things, there's another difference, which is how many blessings the Shliach Tzibor says. In the first 3 fasts he says 19, and in the next ones he says 24. So the Gemara says, if that's true, my shayir to high shayir. What was left over that it left this over? Meaning, there's a rule. You see this throughout Shas. We don't leave over just one thing. If there's only one more thing to insert, then they should put it in the Mishnah. When there's many things, so then you can't write everything, so you leave some things out. But if there was only one difference that wasn't mentioned in the Mishnah, then it would have been mentioned. So that's the question. You're saying there's this, we left out differences. We said there's no difference except for the first ones you could do malacha and the other ones you can't do malacha, you can't do work. And by the way, there's another difference. Well, if there's another difference, then tell me other differences too. There must be more. Visu, and not only that, v'ha'ein bein katani. It says there's no difference except. Ha'ein bein katani. There's no difference except. So sometimes we say that it left things out. Like if it's making a list of something, you could say it left things out. But when it's in the negative, when it says there's no difference except, and it gives you a difference, that's the only difference. There can't be other differences. So what's this idea that there's really other differences, and the first 3 fasts there's only 19, and the next 3 fasts there's 24? No. It says there's no difference except for whether you could do malacha or not, implying the amount of blessings is the same. So the Gemara says, okay, alatana b'isuri kamayri b'tfilos lo mayri. The Mishnah was talking about isurim, prohibitions, restrictions, but b'tfilos lo mayri wasn't talking about the number of prayers. Meaning, really, there is a difference with regard to the number of prayers. And the first 3 fasts have only 19, and the next 3 fasts have 24. And when the Mishnah, the Bryce, I guess, said, there's no difference except for whether you can do work or not, really, there are other differences. But this is the only difference with regards to restrictions. The only difference with regards to restrictions is whether you can do work or not. But with regards to tefillah, what prayers you say, there may be differences. We're not talking about tefillah, which prayers you say. We're talking about the restrictions. That's one possible answer. And according to this, really, the first 3 fasts have 19 blessings. There is a difference. You have 19. The next 3 fasts have 24. And that's it. And there's a difference. And that would, again, working backwards, back to the brisa that said that a yachid davens 19, and a yachid davens 18, and a tzibur davens 19. So what that could mean still is that the yachid, an individual, davens 19, and the tzibur could mean the shliach tzibur davens, a yachid davens 18, and the shliach tzibur davens 19, because a shliach tzibur, the chazan, we could adding a blessing, but we won't adding a blessing for an individual, like Rav Yosef or Rav Yitzchak said, that the blessing of Anenu should always be said in Shomei Tefillah. That's what we can maintain at this point. Another answer to our problem, again, our current problem is that the Mishnah says that there's no difference between the first 3 fasts and the next 3 fasts, except for the restriction on work. And that would imply that with regards to the number of blessings in the Shemona Esrei, they're the same, and it's 24. And that, again, creates problems for us, because our whole idea, our whole defense of Rav Yosef's position was that we could be talking about the first 3 fasts when there's only 19 blessings, but now it sounds like there's 24. It says there's no difference. So the answer is, you can answer, that the middle 3 fasts also don't have 24. It's only in the additional 7 that you add after that there's 24. So when it says there's no difference between the first 3 and the second 3, there's no difference because there's only 19 in both of them. And at the end of the day, the brisa that we had that said that the tzibor davens 19 could be talking about the shliach tzibor on either the first 3 fasts or next 3 fasts, because there's only 19 blessings on both of those. And again, we've defended Rav Yitzchak's position. The Gemara says, Velo, is it true that you don't have 24 blessings on the second set of 3 fasts? V'hatanya, but we have another brisa. It says, Ein ben gimel shnios l'sheva achronos. There's no difference between the middle 3 and the last 7, ela except shebe'elu masriin v'na'alein asachanios. That the last 7, you blow shofar and you close the stores. Halachot divrein zev is a shavim, but for everything else they're equal. So it sounds like they're equal with regards to the 24 blessings. So don't try to argue that the middle also have 19 and not 24. And if you'll tell me, no, when it said there's no difference between the 3 middle fasts and the next 7 fasts, except for blowing shofar and closing the stores, didn't mean just those things. There's other things. And another thing is the number of blessings. Because in the last 7 fasts there's 24, and in the middle 3 fasts there's only 19. Another difference, it just left it out. So again, we'll say, V'ha'eng bein ketanya, but says there's no difference. There's no difference. So don't say there's other differences. It says there's no differences except for blowing shofar and closing the stores. But the Gemara has a response. The Gemara says no. The Tizbrang, according to your logic, you're telling me there's no difference? You won't accept that Taanis V'shayr that there are other differences that weren't mentioned? Eng Beng Davka, you think Eng Beng is exact, is specific? There's no difference except V'shayr Teva. What about Teva? Teva's a box. That they would bring out the bima into the streets. It says that about the last 7 fasts, and that they did not do on the middle fasts. So there's a difference, and it's not mentioned. So you have to agree that there are differences that aren't mentioned. So just like that's not mentioned, so maybe the difference in number of blessings is also not mentioned. And really the middle ones have only 19, and the first ones also have only 19. So the Gemara says, Imishum Teva Lav Shirahu. If you're talking about this halacha of not bringing out the bima, that's not considered leaving something out, because mili de tzina katani, mila de farhestia lo katani. This brisa is only coming to teach me things that are done bitzina, in secret or in indoors, but not the things that are done outdoors in public. So it's talking about things like blowing shofar in the shul and closing the stores, and those are done, on a private basis. But bringing the bima out to the street, that's something very public. We're not talking about the things that are very public like that. When we're describing the differences, we're talking about perhaps the idea is things that individuals need to know, not something that will be the responsibility of the whole congregation. Everyone will witness it, and they'll bring the bima out to the middle. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about things that were done privately, by individual citizens, or even by congregations, but inside, out of sight. And so we were talking about things like closing the stores and blowing shofar. It says there's no difference between the first 7, the last 7, and the middle 3 fasts, except for those 2 things. And davening the number of blessings also in secret, and it doesn't mention that that's a difference. It seems that there's no difference, and just as for the last 7 fasts there are 24 blessings, so too for the middle 3 fasts there are 24 blessings. That's not a difference, and it follows that if for the middle fast there were 24 blessings, So then for the first 3 fasts, there were 24 blessings. That's what would follow based on that. Again, if you're assuming that Ein Bain, that when it says Ein Bain, there's no difference, it's specific, and it's including tefillos. But the Gemara had a previous answer that seems to still be standing, that no, when it said Ein Bain, there's no difference, it was talking about prohibitions, but it wasn't talking about tefillos. It could be that there are differences with regards to tefillos, and therefore it could be that for the first 3 fasts, there are only 19, regardless of how many there are for the second. That still could be up in the air, the second 3 fasts, but the first 3 fasts at least, we can say only had 19, and therefore Rav Yitzchak can still learn his brisa when it said that an individual davens 18, and a tzibor davens 19. The tzibor can mean the shliach tzibor, the chazan, could be that he davens 19. It could be talking about the first 3 fasts, and at the end of the day, an individual on his own never adds a blessing to the Shemona Esrei, and therefore anenu for the individual, he will maintain, and he stands. He hasn't been disproven. An individual can't add his own blessing and would say it in Shomea Tefillah and not adding a new blessing, like was the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak.